Hey, hello everyone, welcome back to the second episode of the Nightwatch.js series. I hope you like the previous video. Let's get started with today's one where we are going to talk about setting up Nightwatch.js for your project. Of course, we'll start with the setting up installation of Nightwatch.js and then we'll have a deep dive into its configuration. We'll first set up the test for multiple browsers. We'll know like how to do that part. Then we'll also work with globals. Then we'll be setting up environment variables, one of the major factor where you don't want to share the secrets, keys and everything. You have to learn this because in the follow-up sessions when we will show like how to run your Nightwatch test on Lambda test, there also you need to use the keys, secret keys and all those things. So how to manage it without exposing it? Then how do you run the test with all this configuration? That comes next. And we're also going to talk about single versus parallel runs. So that's the scope of today's session. I hope you enjoy it as well. This entire series is brought to you by Lambda Test. Lambda Test is a GenAI native quality engineering platform that empowers team to test intelligently, test smarter and ship faster. This is built for scale. It offers a full stack testing cloud with more than 10K real devices and more than 3,000 browsers for cross-browser and end-to-end testing. Amazing, isn't it? So with that, let us get started with the first thing, how to set up and install Nightwatch.js for your project. I want you to follow me doing things. Don't just watch, do things with me. Now to do it, you need some prerequisites. You need Node.js, you need a code editor, any code editor of your choice like VS Code, one of the prominent code editor, a web browser, anything that you like to, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, anything. More than one web browser will be good because we are going to see how to run your test on multiple browsers. And of course, a terminal or command prompt optionally that you can have. Now, if you don't have Node.js, you can go to nodejs.org and here you will find a download link. Click on the download. Then you choose the Node.js for your operating system. It will be automatically selected. For example, I'm on Mac, it's showing Mac OS, and then you can install this. Otherwise, you can download the installer. This is much better approach, I would say. And then just like installing any other tools on your operating system, just install Node.js. Very straightforward installation. I already have installed Node.js on my box, so I am not repeating this, but for you, if you have not done it, please make sure you have installed it. As suggested in the prerequisite, I have installed VS Code and I'm running VS Code over here. So if you're running VS Code, you don't need any external terminal. We have a terminal embedded inside it. You can go to top right and click on this icon. It will open up a terminal for you. Now here, if you have installed Node.js successfully, you can do node space -v. This will show you the version of Node that you have installed. For me, it is showing 23.7.0. Try to use a Node version which is as latest as possible. Nightwatch.js supports all Node version above 14.20. So as I have 23.7.0, it should work. Now let's do the required installation to set up Nightwatch for our project. Now there are multiple ways you can set up and install Nightwatch depending on where you are doing it. If you are doing it for a new project, it means that you are starting with a new project and you want to give the name of the project that you want to start with, then you will give the command saying npm init Nightwatch and then a directory name, basically your project directory name. If you want to initialize with an existing project, for example, I have created a project folder, though it is empty, called code. I can pretty well omit the last project name because this is my existing project, an empty project called code. It's an empty directory and I want to initialize everything required for Nightwatch using this command called npm init Nightwatch. The command npm comes with Node. Once you have installed Node.js, you get npm free with that. So let me run this command. Once I run this command, it's going to ask me a few questions. See, it started. It's saying current working directory is not a Node project. Is it already contains some files? Do you wish to initialize it? So let's go ahead. I'll say yes. Then it's asking, what is the purpose that I'm using Nightwatch.js for? My purpose is end-to-end testing. I can use it for component testing, mobile app testing. These are the things, the capabilities, some of these we have discussed in the introduction video, like what Nightwatch.js is capable for. So I'm going to do for end-to-end testing and you can navigate using this up and down arrow. and then press enter based on your selection. It supports multiple various different environment for language in which you will be writing your test. If your code or your project is written or will be written in plain JavaScript, you can select JavaScript as a default. If it is on TypeScript, you can select TypeScript. If you have an existing environment which is written on Mocha or Cucumber.js, you can also select one of them based on the need. For me, I'll get started with the default JavaScript, so I'll select this. Then it is asking what is your target browsers, and you see there are a bunch of options over here. You can press space to select. For example, I select Chrome, then I come down and select Safari. So I have selected both Chrome and Safari. To deselect, I will press the space again and it will be deselected. Let me start with just Chrome. Later I will tell you like how to add for others also, or let us start with just Chrome and Edge and we'll be adding Firefox and Safari later. Okay, so I'll press enter. Now it's saying enter source folder where the test files will be stored. Now when you are working on a Node.js based project or your UI project, what will happen? Your source code will be inside a directory, maybe SRC directory or outside of SRC directory. Often you don't want to mix your test files with your source files because there might be cases that the test files will be worked upon by a quality assurance engineer, a different person than the actual developer itself. Also, this separation of concern is very helpful in case of deployment as well. So if you have to deploy something, if you have to integrate it with a CI/CD pipeline, if it is in a separate folder, it is very easy to locate the related file based on that. So always select a folder in which you want to keep your test. By default, it is suggesting that it should be test. So I will go ahead with this. Then enter the base URL of the project. The project that I'll be running right now, it's on the local host. So I'll go ahead and accept localhost itself. You can also do some remote cloud services, which we are going to see in our fourth session, where I'm going to show that how you can run the Nightwatch test on Lambda test. But right now it's on the local box. So I'll go with on localhost. Last one, allow Nightwatch to collect completely anonymous usage metrics. If your preference is privacy, you should select the answer as no. But if you want to give certain data out so that it helps Nightwatch.js to improve themselves, you can go for yes. It's up to you. So accordingly, you can press Y or no over here. By default, it says no, skip for now. Yeah, I'll go ahead with skip for now. But if you want to go for it, you can go for it with yes. Now it's installing Nightwatch with all the answers that we have provided. What it is going to do, it is going to collect all this information together and going to create a configuration file for me. That's the configuration file we'll be diving into next to understand what is there inside and how we can actually enhance better. As you can see, while explaining that to you, it had already created few folders and file. We are going to get into each of them and try to understand what's the real purpose of that and how you can make use of them. I can now close this one safely, my command prompt, because we are getting into the explanation or understanding of each of this folder, like what each of this folder is doing. Especially there is a Nightwatch folder, and if I expand that, I am finding few more folders like custom assertions, custom commands, examples, page object, templates, most of which we will touch base in the upcoming sessions. But it's good to have some understanding about each of them. For example, custom assertion, what it is. This folder is for defining your own assertions beyond what Nightwatch provides. Assertions are like conditions. For example, you want to assert when certain tag contains certain text. Now, content text built-in assertion that come from Nightwatch.js. But you might want to write your own assertions for a project-specific logic. That's what you're going to put inside this custom assertions folder. We're going to see some of them when we'll be talking about assertions in the respective sessions. Then comes commands. Commands are for writing reusable commands for your test. And why it matters basically, if you find yourself repeating certain actions, for example, login, logout, filling a form, that are repeated things across your project, you can encapsulate them, write a command, custom commands, and keep those commands inside that. So that's the purpose of this particular folder. Examples, as the name suggests, along with the scaffolding, the project that Nightwatch.js created for us, it also given us certain basic to advanced level test, which you can look into and start understanding, start learning. You are always welcome to look into them, try to make sense out of it before we go to the next session when we write our first test. After examples, we have something called page objects. This folder is used for the page object model, which is also known by its abbreviation called POM. POM is a design pattern that organizes selectors and actions per page, keeps your test more clean, more modular, and more maintainable. And you can also create your own templates and create inside the templates folder. So that's about the folders got created under Nightwatch. Apart from that, node modules is created to keep all your dependencies together. And then you have opted for a folder called test, inside which you will be creating and keeping your test files. This is what this test folder is for. And last but not the least, and actually very important thing that we're going to deep dive today is the nightwatch.conf.js file. So this is the file we are going to get inside right now and try to understand different aspects that we'll be seeing here, and we'll be able to tweaking it to add few more aspects to it. When you scroll down inside nightwatch.conf.js file, the first thing that you'll encounter something called src_folders. This is where you have to tell Nightwatch that where you will be keeping your test files. It can be in multiple places, right? You have opted for a test folder, and then Nightwatch also gives an examples test folder. So by default, the src folders is an array, so that Nightwatch will look into both test and this examples folder, which is under Nightwatch, to run the Nightwatch test. I don't want to complicate things by running it under this examples folder also, so I want to take it away. I am just focusing on running all my tests which are under the test folder. Alright. Page object path, custom command path, custom assertion path, all these three we have seen just now, which is inside this Nightwatch folder. So you are pointing to each of these paths. If you change any of this and if you want to make use of them, you have to come here and give the appropriate path where you want to keep your custom commands, where you want to keep your POM, where you want to keep your custom assertions. Nightwatch.js also supports the plugin ecosystem. We will touch base that towards the end of the series, but once you use more plugins, you have to come and define them inside the Nightwatch config.js file. Global path and the global object is for defining globals. I'm going to explain that to you in a bit. Then about the test workers, I'm going to explain that you in a bit when you talk about the single run versus parallel run. Now, where we want to focus on is about the test settings, because this is very important. When we were answering while installing Nightwatch.js, like what are the browsers we want our test to run on, and we had selected Chrome and Edge, isn't it? So Nightwatch.js configuration file now have the definition for Chrome and Edge. Let's expand Chrome. If I expand Chrome, I'm seeing like there is a desired capabilities. Browser name is Chrome, and it is coming from Google Chrome, which is having some options. By default, some of these options are commented. You can uncomment and you can get more different optional configurations for running your test on the Chrome browser. Similarly, if you come to Edge and expand this, you will find it, okay, browser name is Microsoft Edge, and it's coming from Microsoft Edge, and again certain arguments over there and the WebDriver definition. If you scroll up, there is a default test setting. If you expand that, this is where you can define few things. One, do you want to disable the error log? You should never do it. So that is why it is false. Launch URL is localhost because we're testing things locally. Do you want to enable screenshot when your test fails? And if you enable it, where do you want to keep them? So if you're enabling it to true, if test fails, your screenshot will be taken and it will be inside the screens folder. Now the default desired capabilities, we are saying Chrome. That means that the test will definitely run on Chrome because this is our default. Okay. And again, the WebDriver definition. So this is what we have so far in our Nightwatch config.js file. I think it's time that with this setting itself, we write a tiny test and we run that test and see what is happening with it. Inside the test folder, I have now created something called homepage test.js. You really don't have to understand any of the syntax of this code, but try to understand that I have written some test which is testing by loading a particular URL on your browser and testing whether the title contains certain string or not. That's what it is doing right now. Okay. Now to run this, we need the terminal or the command prompt. You can open it externally or you can open from VS Code itself. I can clear it using the clear command. And now I'm going to run this test. To run the test, the command you have to give npx. Remember, this is not npm, this is npx, then nightwatch, and then give the folder inside which we have kept our test, that is the test folder. Press enter. Now the test will start running. You are seeing default homepage.js. The test is running, is trying to do something. It opened up this browser, Chrome browser, testing it. Yeah, test is passed. Now if I go back to the config file once more by closing all this, it is opening up Chrome. I'm running it on Mac, and here I don't have any Edge browser. And here my definitions are for Chrome and Edge. Edge browser is not there, so it's running it for only Chrome. But I want to run for Safari. I want to run for Firefox. What am I going to do then? Of course, I have to add more browser capabilities. Let me first add the capability for Safari. So wherever the Chrome is, after this, I'm going to add the capability for Safari. This is the Safari capability. Desired capability, browser name is Safari, and then the WebDriver configuration port I have given 4445. Okay, this is again there in the Nightwatch.js documentation, like how to configure different browsers. I've just taken from that, which is there in their documentation, and I have pasted over here. So now if I run the same test again, let's see what happens. Running the default test is running. All right, it's running the test. It again opened up the Chrome browser. Let's see whether it opens up the Safari. No, it didn't open up the Safari browser. Why? Because in the default, I have mentioned that desired capabilities is Chrome. Now, if I change this to Safari and then run this one again, now it opened up my Safari browser. I can see the Safari browser over here and it is running. Now here I want to tell one thing to you guys, because you are getting this right, especially when you're on a Mac, you have to give certain permissions. So please continue the session. And also, if you're on Mac and running things on Safari, you might encounter one problem, that your automation is not running on your Safari browser. In that time, please open up your Safari browser, go to develop, then go to developer settings, and over here please check this checkbox which says allow remote automation. If you don't have this checkbox checked, your automation will not run on Safari. Okay, so for all Mac users, that's the thing. Now, one thing that you noticed, I'm able to run only on one browser at a time. I'm able to run on Safari, I'm able to run on Chrome, but on one browser at a time. How can I run on multiple browsers? Nightwatch.js supports running your test across multiple browsers in parallel. Now you would have noticed that we use this command to run the test, and then by default we're given a browser name, it was running on that browser. By the way, you can also omit this test folder, because we have given while creating the configuration that test is our legitimate test folder, so you may skip that. Without that also your test will run, but in this case test will run only on Safari because we made Safari as default. Now let's say you want to run the test on both Safari and Chrome, because we have the setting for both, right? So for that purpose you can do the command in this way: npx nightwatch, then --env, and then put your browser name in the comma separated format. For example, I have Safari and then I have Chrome. Now, if I execute it, my test will run in parallel on both environments. You see here Safari and Chrome, and you can see both the environments side by side as well. So for Safari, it ran, it got over. For Chrome also, it ran and it got over. Now, this way of doing parallel testing is through test workers. What is test workers? Again, I'll go to the nightwatch config.js file where you are finding these test workers are enabled and it is true. Okay. You can also specify how many workers you need. You need 2 workers, 3 workers, or also you can put workers as auto with something like this, that Nightwatch.js will take care by itself. Okay. So these configurations are pretty important ones. Make sure you use them to run your parallel test. Next, let us talk about globals. Often you would need certain values across your test suites, across your test definitions, and we call them as global. Ideally, those are like key value pair. It could be certain configuration parameter that you want to use across different test suites and you want to declare them as global. So one way you can do it is by creating a separate file for your global and give that file path over here as a global_path, or you can define them in your nightwatch.conf.js file itself as globals like this: globals globals. This is an object, and inside that object you can define any key value pair. For example, let's say team and we give a value as lambda test. Now, if we want to create a test, for example, over here under test folder, let's create a file called sampletest.js and let's create a demo test like this to test the global example, where if you're seeing over here, I'm accessing these global variables from the browser's namespace. So this globals is coming from here. This got added into a namespace called browser. Under browser, you have globals, and inside globals, whatever the key value pair that you have defined, using the key, you will get the value. So globals.team is going to give the value lambda test. So here I'm simply doing a console.log just for testing purpose to ensure that whatever I am defining as a globals in my config, I can read it inside my test or not. Not only in this sample test.js, if I want, I can also read browser.globals.team inside my homepage test as well. That's why across different test suites, if you want to use something which is very common or global. Can we run this one? Yes, we can. So I'll clear this and let me run. This is very specific test. So test slash, instead of running all the tests inside the test folder, I'm just interested in running this particular test. So when I run, I should see a console log. It should be the value of my this global teams value. Let's see. Okay, it's running test global and I can see lambda test over here. This lambda test, this console.log is coming from here and it is resolving globals.team, which is nothing but this particular team. Okay, so this is how you will be defining globals. I hope it was useful to you. And if you don't want to keep your globals in your nightwatch.js file, you can keep this in a separate file, but give the path of that file over here in the globals path configuration options. Let us now learn about the environment variables. I was mentioning that this is really crucial and we'll use it a lot in the upcoming sessions. Let's learn how to do that. For environment variable, you should create a file called .env. And why we need this .env file and why this environment variable are so important, because often in your programming you would use certain values which are like secrets and those should not be shared with anybody else. You should not be committing them into your source repository. So there are varieties of things that you need to take care of. For example, if you're working with lambda test, you will have something called lambda test username and lambda test access key. Let's mimic them. Let me have something called a lambda test username, which is a key. I'll have the value as my lambda test username. Okay, this is not my username, of course. And similarly, I'll have one more called lambda test access key. And let me have a value saying my lambda test access key. Okay, so these are the two environment variables that I have created. Now, how can we access this environment variable inside my program, inside my test or my configuration files? How can I do that? Let me show you how can you do it in your configuration files. Coming to your config.js file, if you need any of these values like lambda test username, lambda test access key, you can use this value in this fashion. For example, if you need that value over here, you will use it like this: a $sign, a pair of curly braces, and inside that the key of the environment variable whose value you want to retrieve over here. If you do that, then this will be resolved to the value for this key at the runtime, which will be my LT username. Definitely will be using them while running our Nightwatch test on lambda test in future. But what if you want to use the environment variable inside your test, not your configuration file? That also you can do. In that case, you have to use process.env in front of your environment variable key to retrieve the value. Something like this. Here I am doing a log of same lambda test username, but to retrieve the value of it, I have to use process.env in front of it. So if you do process.env.lambda-test.username, this will resolve to the value for this particular key. I can do same thing with the lambda test access key also. I'll just copy this one, go to my test, and I'll put another console.log with the access key. So coming over here, I'll run only this test. Let's see, it will put it in the console.log. Yes, of course, I see lambda test. This is coming from global. Then my lambda test username and my lambda test access key are coming from nothing but the .env. I hope it was useful to you. Now let's do a check. In the beginning, whatever we have promised, have we covered everything? Yes, of course, we have done the setup, installation of Nightwatch. We have seen the configurations. We know how to set up multiple browsers. We did for Edge, Chrome, Safari. We understood how to work with globals. We set up the environment variables, we ran the test because we had to run the test multiple times to showcase all of these things, and we have also understood what is single versus parallel runs, what is the workers, and how to configure them. Up next, in the next session, in the session number 3, we'll be learning to write test in much better way. So thanks again for listening to me. Thanks to Lambda Test for bringing this series in front of you. If you have any questions or any feedback, please write to support@lambdatest.com or go to www.lambdatest.com. And if you want to learn more, please follow us, follow our blog. There are a lot of articles out there, and please join our community on community.lambdatest.com. And don't just stop here. If you want to achieve Lambda Test certification, you want to be recognized on your resumes, check out lambdatest.com/certifications. You can get educated and get recognized about Lambda Test. All right, guys, take a great care of yourself. We'll be coming back with the episode number 3, session 3 very soon.